Because of the coronavirus, St. Olaf College in Minnesota has canceled graduation ceremonies. Unless you are black, foreign, or gay. I don't know if they're trying to infect minorities or just discriminate further against white students. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we kick things off in Minnesota, where St. Olaf College has decided to postpone graduation for the majority of students, except for the minorities and those who identify as LGBTQ. Yep, Katie, and that is not a fake headline right there. We have a situation at St. Olaf College where they're so concerned about the coronavirus. They've canceled classes. Everything's gone to online. All online events have been all on-site events have been canceled. But when it comes to graduation, the only people who are going to get a graduation ceremony are foreign students, non-Americans, African-American kids, and LGBTQ people.
And specifically for them, they like to use LGBTQIA plus students. So if you are a student and you really, really, really want to have a graduation ceremony, just self-identify. And then you can go into one of these ceremonies. They're saying that they are having these specific virtual type graduation ceremonies because, you know, these populations really, really deserve it, essentially.
In other words, if you are black, foreign, or LGBT ... your experiences matter. You're literally saying this now, right? So we have a quote here. Self-identified domestic students of color, international students, and LGBTQIA+. And what does the plus stand for? Nobody knows.
Everything you want it to be.
Anything you want it to be. At the Minnesota school will receive their own virtual graduation ceremonies at the conclusion of this year amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So they are virtual, yes, but we're taking time to give those kids specific graduations. This is what we used to call, back in the day, Cletus, when I was a boy, we used to call this discrimination. How's it not discrimination?
Because you're woke now.
Oh,
now you're woke.
I forgot.
But, as we said before, meanwhile, the graduation for the rest of the class of 2020 has been, quote, rescheduled for a date in late May / early June of 2021. So anyone who's worked for 4 years, if you don't fit in that little niche, you have to wait all the way till 2021. Who's going to actually participate in that?
No one's going to participate unless some of these self-identified people come back and have a second graduation.
They probably will. Now, the 3 virtual graduation ceremonies for students in these minority groups were announced by and will be hosted through the Taylor Center for Equity and Inclusion. This project of the school exists to help students of color, LGBTQIA+, and international students to celebrate their awesomeness factor. Per
I'm
the
betting.
center's website.
Now, if you've ever watched the Dr. Duke Show over the last few years, you know we've dealt with St. Olaf many times.
Yes.
Of all the annoying little liberal arts colleges out there, the smug, the insulated, the obtuse little liberal arts college, the incredibly, shockingly expensive liberal arts colleges that populate this country, St. Olaf is perhaps one of the most annoying. We've done story after story after story about them. This is an organization, this is a school that is absolutely willing to discriminate against its own students. This is a Christian, as you can tell from the name St. Olaf, this is putatively a Christian school that goes after Christian worldview, attacks Christian worldview in defense of a progressive worldview. And now they're doing what so many modern universities are doing. They are openly and boastfully discriminating against certain individuals, traditional students. If I were a non-traditional student, I mean, why aren't they getting their day in the sun?
Look at me. I was a non-trad.
Exactly.
Where is my day?
No, but you've got to be. I don't see Hispanics here.
Not specific.
Or what about Asians?
Well, if they're international, then yeah.
Well, Asian American kids.
Oh,
African American kids.
See.
We're going to celebrate African American kids' awesomeness. But if you're Asian American, first generation Asian American, your parents speak only Hmong, right? And you've made your way through the schools at St. Olaf. What do you get?
So wait until 2021 to have your graduation. Remember, this is all about self-identifying. So you could just put yourself into any one of these 3. Now, these graduation ceremonies, of course, have to be called something. So they actually are calling them the multicultural ceremony, the international, and then the lavender graduation.
Oh, the lavender.
Because lavender,
Isn't
we know.
it interesting that because what word would you use? This is the LGBT endless alphabet's got it into a
Alphabet soup.
They've got themselves into a problem, right?
They do.
You can't just say the gay, then the lesbians are.
Yeah.
You can't just say the trans, and then it's just endless, right? But I want to go back to this diploma. Are they going to actually get a diploma that says because you're awesome?
The awesomeness factor.
Well, I think of Dwight Schrute
Oh,
warming
no.
up for his job review. I am awesome.
Well, we'll see if that actually happens. So, just so you know, feelings of what's going on with all these feelings, all the other students, the center actually announced its intent to host these online graduation ceremonies in an email on Friday. And just so everyone got that email. So if you're just a normal student, you read this email that said, this event acknowledges the value and uniqueness of students' experience and serves to commemorate and highlight the accomplishments of individuals within their familial and cultural context. So if you're just an average student who's like, man, I wonder if they're going to have graduation, you get it, and that's what you see.
Look at the BS ed speak in this, right? Accomplishments of individuals. That makes it sound like they care about individuals. Accomplishment of individuals, but not as individuals, because then you'd include everybody. Individuals within their liberal, progressive, familial, and cultural context. That's what we're looking about here.
Yeah, so we'll have to see what actually comes of this, because I wonder if there's going to be protests here at St. Olaf. Probably not.
No, how dare you, if you're progressive, protest discrimination that comes from liberals? That never gets done, does it?
For our second story of the day, we're taking a look at universities considering canceling live classes until 2021. We're still living in this lockdown era of the COVID-19. So right now across the nation, colleges, universities, they're trying to figure out what the future is going to look like. And in terms of live classes, there's discussion going around. Maybe we're not going to even bring kids and faculty back until 2021. So CNN reported that Boston University already has canceled all of their in-person summer courses with protocols for what to do if basically fall classes can't be held in person. According to an online statement, the recovery plan recognizes that if in the unlikely event that public health officials deem it unsafe to open in the fall of 2020, then the university's contingency plan envisions the need to consider a later in-person return, perhaps in January of 2021. So you, as a college professor, this would affect you if this goes across the whole nation. What are your thoughts
Well,
on
it
this
already
one?
has. For some of this, look, today, Governor of Virginia, Northam, came out today and said it may be 2 years, 2 full years, before we actually open live schools again. And what gets me about this is I get contingency plans. Go ahead and make them, but keep your friggin' mouth shut. Do we absolutely need universities adding to the hysteria here? Look, this is fall of this year, or even projecting all the way through the end of the fall term into January of next year. It may happen. I think the odds, like they say, are very slim, but we don't need to know this. The incredible amount of talk in this country about how terrible everything is, it's grinding everything to a halt. America used to be a country of optimism, right? Remember optimism, Katie?
I know optimism. I didn't know you ever understood what that term meant.
I have a predilection to pessimism, especially when it comes to educrats,
pessimism,
right?
That's true.
However, having said that, this you can actually talk yourself into a situation where you make things much worse than they are. And that's what these guys are doing. Especially with Northam and Virginia, 2 years, why don't we take it a couple months at a time? At my university where I teach, we already canceled, of course, spring classes. I taught I'm teaching an interim May class, that's canceled except for in live, that's canceled. And I'm teaching a summer school course that, guess what, will only be taught over online. And they made this decision 3 months ago. So all of this stuff needs to be taken with a little grain of salt. And if you are planning these things, be good Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, plan ahead. But do we need to know this constant threat, this constant, this may go on another 18 months. It may be 2 years before this is over. It may be a year and a half before we have a vaccine. Okay, right? We get it. But everything seems to be mediating. Everything seems to be pulling back generally. How about time for a little academic optimism?
Oh, you raise a good issue that's just a general practice for everything going on in our country, even before this panic has happened. What people need to do, as we are seeing, the more panic you put out there, they're calling it panic porn at this point, that the more you're putting out there this information, it's clogging everyone's mind. They're already in a frenzy. So to say, oh my gosh, you're not even going to get on campus till 2021 it's putting students' minds racing even more than they were before. So we do have a quote from an epidemiologist named Eric Fagelding. It's hyphenated. Fagelding. He's an epidemiologist and a visiting scientist at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. He actually told CNN that the colleges are doing the right thing by planning for the unexpected. And I think, as you said, they should be planning, but maybe not telling us everything because it just creates panic. He says, I think colleges should all definitely make plans for delaying start dates and for intermittent closings and reopenings because epidemiology modeling suggests we may have to go into open and close waves until potentially even 2022.
Yeah. And again, you're dealing with a demographic in kids. Now, this is interesting to me. This is the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. It'd be interesting to know how much Chinese money they've got. Wouldn't it be? You've got Eric Fagelding, hyphenated ding, makes you wonder, right? We have done story after story of Chinese influence, how Chinese visa students are sending material, acting as spies, basically, sending back all sorts of information to China. We have how many professors in the last 6 months who have been fired and or deported and or prosecuted? Chinese professors who are stealing American technology and conspiring with the Chinese government. We do know that the Chinese have lied to us to our faces. To our face. They've looked us in the eyes and they've lied to us about numbers and dates and timelines. And the Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health is now telling CNN, who may as well be the Chinese news network, telling CNN that, yeah, this may go on for a long time. Let's keep everything nice and distracted. Let's keep the economy completely stalled. Let's keep people on pins and needles. Heaven forbid.
And we're not being conspiracy theorists. We're just pointing out that there is information here and everyone is free to look at that information as they see fit.
Which information are you talking about?
All of the things you just maybe discussed.
There's no conspiracy. How is it
That's what I'm saying. There is no conspiracy. I'm just saying,
here.
You think for yourselves, people. These are the facts. Them be the facts.
When
you interpret them.
Bill Gates came out today and said China did a wonderful job, but America stinks. That's not a conspiracy fact. That's Bill Gates.
Still to come, we're going to take a look at K12 schools preparing for no live classes this fall. So we're going to take a look now at Colorado as a little bit of a petri dish, where their governor, Jared Polis, basically has informed all the schools there that they should be preparing for the possibility of not having in-person instruction until January of 2021. They basically sent out a note to the superintendents of 178 public school districts. They were notified of what they're going to be doing, according to their Colorado Springs local station KKTV 11. So for the fall semester, the governor advised that the superintendents develop proposals for continued distance learning, but also to create models that would employ staggered start times and new formats for how they're going to handle lunches or passing periods and other interactions that would allow this whole, proper social distancing, 6 feet apart, as they do get back into the school system. So now, not only are the colleges taking a look at this, which is probably easier to handle how that would look on a college campus, now you got to implement it for K through 12.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't necessarily call Colorado a petri dish. Maybe more like reading the marijuana leaves in bong resin. How about that?
Okay, fine. We'll go with that.
Let's make our cultural references appropriate to the states we're dealing with.
Sure.
This goes back to the previous story we did. And again, go ahead and prepare for this. But this idea that we're cautioning everybody, right? It's almost as if there's almost like this glint in the eyes of these administrators that we won't have to come back until. And the other thing that gets me, we've said this many times in the Dr. Duke Show, one of the alarming things about American public schools is the degree to which they have appropriated almost every aspect of parenting, right? And so even perhaps less important than online delivery of classes, how are we going to get the kids their lunches, right? How are we going to get the kids their sociological messaging? How are we going to teach those kids radical sexual education when all we've got is the online teaching models? The whole thing is really, really overwrought.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, too. I mean, again, I think it's a lot easier to handle when you're talking about the universities, just because they should be adults and should be able to just, okay, here's how we're going to handle it, obey the rules, and we know they don't do that. But at the K-12 level, if you create that sort of a panic now in the school system, and we've talked about this just in general, all the administrators talk about how it's supposed to be a safety zone. It's your safe space is being at the school. But if you start having to implement these social distancing 6 feet apart and it becomes so regulated and so rigid, it's going to terrify these children when they do go back, because it's going to happen.
I just want to remind you, and I always do during these stories, there's one kind of schooling where none of this matters.
Which one?
Homeschooling, right?
Oh.
Homeschool. If you're homeschooling your kids, guess what? They haven't missed a single day of class. Guess what? They're not. They've not been made susceptible to anybody's viruses but mom and dad's, right? As far as lunches go, you don't need a federal program or a state program that you're being taxed for to feed your kids Lunchables at lunchtime. You don't need to drive up to the school and get your brown bag, even while you're social distancing cars 6 feet apart.
Are they doing brown bags, or is that racist?
That's, I think in New York they have been.
Oh.
Brown bag. You drive up. Remember the story a couple
Brown
weeks ago
bags?
where in
I'm
New
just
York
saying.
you can't leave your house for any reason,
No.
but you could get in the car and drive to your local public school and get your brown bag lunch paid for by us, and then you go back home.
I really, at this point, I'm surprised someone hasn't done this, comparing all the brown bag lunches across the nation.
Yes.
Which school district actually has the best brown bag lunch?
Be careful. Michelle Obama may be listening. And she may start to say, like she did when her husband was president, start to meddle with your lunches, right?
This is true.
How fast did that lunch program go away the day Obama walked out of the White House? Even
Basically.
the liberals didn't defend it when it left, right? It's like 15 calories a day. Unless you go to Sidwell Friends, where the Obamas sent their kids, where they had lavish 1,500 calorie lunches available.
All right, but back to Colorado.
Back
I
to
guess
Colorado.
I'm hungry, so
Okay.
that I got on the lunch talk.
Isn't hunger a sign of being stoned? Get the munchies?
Maybe I do.
This is Colorado after all. Trying to be
All right.
cultural specific.
Well, they currently are dealing in all of Colorado about graduation, because some schools are canceling graduation ceremonies, some are not. We talked about that already at the college level, but it's at the high school level too. So it'll be interesting to see what they do that before they get to even next year.
There's a lot that's going to happen between now and the fall. It's just quit scaring people to death. And mom and dad, if you're terrified about your kids, consider homeschooling.
We're going to wrap things up with some real education featuring William Butler Yeats' instant classic, When You Are Old. So we have a poem by William Butler Yeats, or W.B. Yeats, and it's back from 1892. Yeats was an Irishman known for his poetry and other writings, but he also became a politician, and he was influenced by Percy Shelley and Edmund Spenser. Now, he went and got himself a Nobel Prize in Literature in 1923 for his always inspired poetry, which in a highly artistic form gives expression to the spirit of a whole nation. The poem When You Are Old from 1892 would be part of that inspired poetry, showing his classification as a symbolist poet.
William Butler Yeats is one of the great English-Irish poets in Western culture, and Yeats was very much concerned about giving the Irish back an Irish literature that wasn't overshadowed by English literature. And if you know anything about William Butler Yeats, you'll know he was a tremendous patriot on behalf of the Irish during the Troubles, right, during the English occupation and those difficult times at the turn of the century. Yeats also was very much in love with a young activist woman by the name of Maud Gonne. And she was quite beautiful, very talented, and she was very much also committed to an independent Ireland. And for a long time, Yeats tried to get Maud Gonne to marry him. And she wouldn't do it. In fact, at one point, Maud Gonne said to Yeats, imagine one of the great poets of world history telling him, "I can't marry you, honey, because if I did, it might compromise your talent." Literally, she said to him, if you get distracted with me in marriage, it may undercut your poetic output. And so she did not marry Yeats, and she ended up marrying somebody else. Yeats himself would marry down the road a little bit. But the poem itself is about Maud Gonne. It's all about when they get old, right? When you are old, he writes to her, when you are old and we are not together, maybe this is how it's going to look. When you are old and gray and full of sleep and nodding by the fire, take down this book and slowly read and dream of the soft look your eyes had once and of their shadows deep. Now that first stanza is beautiful, right? I like it. When you are old and gray and full of sleep, right? With extreme age comes sleepiness, and it's a metaphor for everything that we lose as our minds begin to go to bed, so to speak. And when you're nodding by the fire, take down this book of poems and slowly read this one. And dream of the soft look that your eyes had once and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace? How many men, how many loved your beauty with love false or true? But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you, and love the sorrows of your changing face. Beautiful, right? But there was one man who loved that pilgrim soul, a pilgrim soul. It was always sacrificing for the country over person, right? As opposed to the religion. A pilgrim is somebody who made religious journeys all over the place, right? To demonstrate their piety. But one man loved, that's what I loved about you. It wasn't your eyes, it wasn't your beauty, but one man loved that pilgrim soul in you and loved the sorrows of your changing face. And bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur a little sadly how love fled and paced upon the mountains overhead and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. And that last poem is really quite lovely, right? And as you are nodding by the fire and you're reading and remembering, right, maybe a lot of that memory's been lost to old age, let this poem remind you. And when you're there, bending down in your Afghan, right, closer to the bars, the glowing bars, maybe you'll murmur a little sadly how love fled and paced upon the mountains overhead and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. The idea there at the end that maybe this love between she and I, maybe it was sacrificed to the higher, loftier ideals. Maybe the mountains overhead represents an independent Ireland. Maybe the stars above those mountains represents poetic and artistic achievement. This reminds me a lot of Shakespeare, how Shakespeare would tell in his sonnets, would tell the dark lady who he loved, how these poems will make you immortal, how these poems are going to change everything, that whatever happens or didn't happen between us or was unable to happen between us, it will be written in the stars, that artistic achievement will give you a kind of immortality. Actually, the love we never had, the consummation that never came, it was immortalized in the poems of Yeats.
That was poetry. That's going to do it for this Monday. As always, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And if you have a question for our Friday Q&A, visit freedomproject.com/askduke to send it our way. Otherwise, send us a message on social media. We want to know what question has been burning in your mind. But now, we're going to wrap things up with a fun fact of the day. Did you know, Dr. Duke, that today is the day the universe was made, at least according to Johannes Kepler, who claimed that April 27th, 4977 BC was the day the universe was created.
That's really an interesting fun fact, because when you think about how the Bible seems to date time, if you look at the Bible, it seems to suggest that the world's about 6,000 years old. If you count the generations back from all the way to Adam, right, through Noah, through all of them, right, and so the idea here that you've got Kepler, who was a great leap forward in terms of astronomy, helped us realize that the sun was the center of the universe. You see just how the old and the new meet in those Renaissance conceptions of astronomy. For Freedom Project Media, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.